out there, podcasters. Brent Lancaster here. Good to see you. We found a name for our podcast. In other words, what we're going to be doing is taking one word and see if we can dissect it every single possible way. This week's word, disruption. Everybody say, ooh.
Ooh.
So first things first, let's go around the horn. Jody, top left. What does disruption mean to you?
Hey there. I think it means lots of things, but not disruption. I think that word kind of has sort of a negative context often when people kind of think of it. I think it means change. I think it means moving forward. Those types of much more positive aspects to what the word.
Love it. Evan, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's happening?
Oh, doing all right. Doing all right. What does disruption mean to you?
I think Jody's right. Change, innovation. I heard somebody say recently that disruption is innovation that happens to someone. You know, so when somebody innovates in maybe an existing space or market and causes a change, and the negative part I think is, you know, people get cranky around the change, and yeah, disruption.
Awesome. Lee, how about yourself? How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, and they took my answers, Brent.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, just make something else up. That's fine.
I think it's absolutely innovation. I know there's a lot of negative context around it, as if these are bad people, but I think these are great people. You know, these disruptors move our industry forward, and you know, the disruptors that aren't awesome, you know, they just miraculously go away. So I like disruption. I think it's good, and it keeps us sharp.
Yeah, I think the competition, right? You have to have competition for things to move forward. Maybe there's the picture of like the Silicon Valley disruptor who loves to call themselves a disruptor, and you know, they probably have a beard, and you know what I'm saying? Like I think there's maybe a stereotype that goes along with it, but maybe what Lee is getting at is the idea that you gotta interrupt things, change them to move forward. I think that's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, those original real estate guys that founded NAR, they were absolutely disruptors. I mean, they were like, hey, it's not about us making money, it's about the consumer. And I think that for many years as a real estate industry, we may have gotten away from that focus on this consumer. Probably not at the one-on-one level. I think we were all focused on, taking care of our individual consumers. But as far as an industry path, it got very territorial and all about the way we do business and maintaining that status quo. So to see all these new business models and technology and ideas and things that are, kind of answering the questions that the consumers have always had, but to actually answer them and address them now is disruption, but I like it.
I mean, disruption a lot of times is sort of synonymous in my mind to technology, and I think I guess you can kind of move the real estate as it relates to the real estate context. Probably the real estate business models can go in there as well. So disruption to me is a big eye roll. I think I hate to be the contrarian, but I don't necessarily I press pause. Whenever I hear disruption, I immediately press pause and go, okay, is this disruption for the sake of disruption? Is this disruption because, here I am trying to sell the new flashy product or get you to join my new flashy company? Well, so, everybody wants to be a disruptor. And my point is, I guess my next question leads me to you, or to anyone really, is how much time do we have to pay attention to disruption? Like how do we know when it's worthwhile, right? Because you got disruption for disruption's sake. Hey, there's been disruptions that are going to bankrupt the real estate industry, cause agents to go out of business, turn brokerages around on their head. When does it just become noise?
You know, it's interesting. Lee used the term, and she said, those that are really awesome, you know, stick around and change the
Right.
industry. Those that aren't, go away. They're kind of like a flash in the pan. And I think that goes to your question, Brent, is when do you have to pay attention, is trying to potentially figure those things out. It reminded me when she said that, reminded me of many years ago, for lack of a better term, a discount brokerage, someone with a different commission model structure came into one of our divisional marketplaces with this company I was working for. And everyone was in this absolute panic, and they were disrupting, and they were never going to do another transaction again in their life. And they asked me to create a training program to address these objections and learn how to handle them. And by the time I had the program written and implemented, the company was gone.
We're out. Yeah.
They were more than a flash in the pan. I don't even think they didn't even make it, I don't think 6 months in the industry before. So you are right. We have to be careful of what we pay attention to. Yet on the same token, you know, we see, if we go way back to the birth of franchises, or as you said, the technology. I can remember my best friend sitting on the MLS committee probably close to 25 years ago now, when they did not want to put the MLS on a computer because not everyone had one.
Yeah.
So, and clearly that was a change you needed to pay attention to. So some of them you do need to, and some of them you don't. But I think probably the baseline is your own structure or belief system first.
Is disruption synonymous in change? I mean, just because something's changed doesn't necessarily mean it's a disruption, does it, Evan?
No, it doesn't. But I think if you flip that, I think disruption represents change. And I mean, I'm thinking more from the consumer side, and I'm thinking of it like a gap, right? We've been rolling along with organized real estate for 100 and some odd years, you know, at least under the NAR kind of format, right? And somebody comes along and says, oh, we see an area where you're not serving the consumer. Do you have to pay attention to it? I mean, I think you have to, as a professional, you have to pay attention to trends, right? And then see what happens with them. There's two ways to look at it too. Like, if you're coming from like a scarcity mindset and fear, and like, oh, somebody has a new thing and they're taking a little slice of my pie, and then, you know, all the sky is falling defensiveness that comes with that. Or you can look at it and say, well, I still have plenty of the pie. I know what I'm good at. I know who I serve. And then I just need to know about these other options so that I can explain them to my clients, you know?
Money. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's my whole disruption in a nutshell. So
can I have a point for that answer, please?
Yeah, fire. For what?
I have one point.
That's one point. That's right. Let's give you 1,000 points. Why not?
Whoa! All right.
Keeping score here. Doesn't matter. So Lee, if we talked about disruption's good, what's the bad side to it? Is there a bad side to it?
You know, I think anytime that there is disruption that harms that consumer, then yeah, that would be bad.
Okay.
So, and my most recent example is going to be like all the other examples. It was only bad for a minute, and then it got better. But the introduction of iBuyers into the marketplace. So when that first started, I think it was bad for consumers, because the consumer and even the ones that were utilizing the service did not understand what it truly meant, you know, what was happening, and, you know, what they might be leaving on the table financially. But now there's a lot of information out there about what it means. And I think, because sometimes it is I mean, they don't net as much, but still in some situations, it is the best thing for them. And as long as they have all the information and can make an educated decision, I think that it's been good for the consumer. It's when they weren't being told, you know, what the facts were, that I was bothered by it. But I think all that's better now. I think everybody, certainly, you know, most of the real estate agents and a whole lot of consumers know, you know, what's going on there.
Right. Are we going there? Are we going to talk about iBuyers? Is that what we want to do?
We can. I mean, if we're talking about disruption, I think we have to talk about iBuyers and limited service and
Yeah.
Huge independent brokerages, all that stuff. Yeah.
Evan, go
I
ahead.
think the iBuyer is a good example of what we were just describing. You know, looking at the industry and finding a gap where our sellers willing to pay a premium to make it, you know, well, hassle is the buzzword that most of the iBuyers use, less of a hassle, right? But time, convenience, more certainty, right? And you're going to pay for that in most cases. So does that change my business model? Not necessarily, but you know, I should be aware of the fact that 4 years ago, their market share was 0, right? And now, depending on what market you're in, it's as high as, you know, 5 or 6%, or maybe even more in a month. So the way that I look at that is I need to be able to explain those options to my sellers. And if that's a good option for them, so be it, because I don't serve that area myself. So I think that's like truly a disruptive force would come in and take a piece and be sustainable, which it seems to be.
You know, I would add to, you know, the iBuyer conversation, kind of looping back to when is disruption bad, is that the certain people view disruption like the next shiny object, and they keep pivoting towards all these changes. So they're actually attracted to them, not put off by them. And
Right.
that can often be a real negative for a brokerage as well, because it may not be in alignment with the rest of the brokerage's values or practices or procedures that go through. So iBuyers is a completely different way of dealing with the buy side of our real estate transaction. So you can't go into something like that totally unprepared, or as Lee said, the consumer gets harmed, you know, from that, when you have no idea of what you're doing. So you need to really understand, and I get the point of wanting to be an early adopter sometimes, but you have to understand what you're doing as well. And I think iBuyers is a great example, because it's certainly far more complicated than some of our most recent disruptions.
What about disrupting your own business? Can you disrupt yourself, Brent? Can you disrupt your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. That's sort of what an internal look is. That's part of what I was going to say as well. Is you kind of look at, sometimes the disruptor is a single human being in your marketplace, or
Right.
you know, a human being in your office. I mean, at some point you have your good thing going, and somebody comes in and takes your piece of the pie. Forget if it's an iBuyer or another company or a brokerage. I mean, I do think that, you know, to some degree, you need to be on guard, but I don't know, you know, I'm a big proponent of offense, not defense, and I think disruption automatically puts people on playing defense, and I can't subscribe to that. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
to your point, Evan, I guess, you know, to disrupt the disruptor, you kind of got to look internally and go, okay, let's figure out a way that we can punch back. So yeah, I guess I don't like using the word, so I've never looked at it as disruption.
I don't like the,
But I
I
do
don't like
think
the word either, but you know,
what's that?
I don't like the word either. It's so overused, but
I think you need to take stock of it, but I think from that particular standpoint, yeah, I mean, everybody needs a good kick in the pants. I mean, except me, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, y'all are right though. It has become the it word. You know, I mean, it's a popular word that everybody is using. I mean, I think it's good for headlines. It gets attention.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's one of those things that if I'm a disruptor, it automatically means I'm smart and I'm conscious to change and I've got the new best thing. And
yeah,
it's
I'm a
almost as a sales
visionary.
pitch, right? If I were to create a product to sell to real estate agents, I don't care what it would be the biggest disruption in real estate in 2020, right?
All
So
right.
that's the greatest sales pitch ever. So I don't know. So what we've talked about, from an iBuyer standpoint, what's interesting, I thought that's real interesting. Everybody thinks that the iBuyer is actually more or less of a good disruptor. Did I mishear that?
I think it is.
I agree. I think it is as well. I think
So why is
it
everybody so mad
deals
about
with the changing world.
Well, in my experience, I'm not mad about it, but in my experience in talking with people, it has a whole lot to do with lack of education or understanding. You
it? Okay.
know, I, 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 I mean, change is hard, right? And if you're going along one way and comfortable, and then somebody, takes your ball, or you have to make an adjustment and adapt to it. That's hard, right? And I think fear is like a reaction to that.
Yeah.
So the first thing I think you need to do if you feel like you're being like disrupted is take stock of like, what is this thing that people are talking about? Like really go to understand it yourself, talk to people who are experts, and make your own judgments, and then decide if it's something that you should react to or just be aware of,
Well, I think we also have to try to look at those things from the consumer's viewpoint. If I were
Right.
a consumer and I didn't know what I know about how real estate works and agency and that kind of stuff, would this appeal to me and why?
Yeah.
hmm
I think that's an important question to ask.
Well, along those lines, what do you think has been the largest disruption in the industry in the last, let's say, 10 years, since we're in 2020? I know my answer.
In the last 10 years,
I've got one that's not, and it's not iBuyers. I've got one whenever.
Mine's not either.
I want
What
to
is it?
hear yours, Evan.
I would say teams.
Ah, interesting.
whoa,
Okay.
I think if you look at the small brokerage or any brokerage models, right? The not that they were invented in the last 10 years, but the acceleration of the number of
The
teams and how they
proliferation.
operate as businesses within a brokerage, the pressure that puts on the brokerages to compete, and all of from risk management and liability to marketing and yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
changes, and it's being figured out on the ship is being built on the fly.
Yeah. It's been built on the water. Yeah. Mine's Zillow. I think from
Yeah.
a portal, from an industry standard. I mean, you kind of look at the unique visitors they get per month, and it blows pretty much every other real estate website out of the water. You look at again, the rise of that particular power, and what made me think of it is how the consumer views that particular portal, and the visceral reaction of real estate agents, and then on the other end, how much money agents are giving to Zillow to get those leads. So it's just a real interesting scenario. Maybe that can be a word too. I'm thinking that basically these are in other words, down the road, one that's on Teams and one that's on Zillow. I can see it
Yeah.
happening now, but that'd be mine
Yeah,
there
you're
as
right.
well.
Yours is better. I think that's a bigger one than mine. So
Now,
that's
I was more surprised. I liked yours.
I
So,
can,
gals,
I
what do you
don't,
say?
I don't know that I don't know if mine's bigger or not, but it's certainly equal. And I think that's social media.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, good.
I mean, dang. So, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of our time, and not only do your clients see it, but it's not always people who are, I mean, like people that you have never had any contact with
Sure.
whatsoever will stalk you on social media to decide if they even want to talk to you about becoming their realtor. And it's so conscious to have to play to that all the time. And then add on top of that all the advertising rules and etiquette that you're either considering or not, but should be, um and there's so many different platforms, you know, it's like you get proficient at one and there's another one that's more popular now. And what demographic are you targeting, and
Yeah.
what social media platform are they on? How do you find time to post to these things every stinking day? And what do you say? You know, I mean, it's just, yeah, I'm gonna
I
go
wanna
back
do
on
a
my word. It is the
TikTok.
biggest. It is the biggest. Social media is the
Yeah,
biggest.
that's an awesome one. Love that one.
What's
All
that,
right,
Jody? Are you hanging out on TikTok these days?
No,
Yeah.
I know. She said when she said that something new as soon as you get used to one, I was thinking of that. I'm like, let's do a TikTok.
Evan and I were in Orlando, and we were at line to eat dinner, and somebody around us was talking about TikTok, and Evan sends a text to his daughter. How do you explain TikTok to an old person?
And what did she say? That's what I
I don't
want to
know.
know. What did
I'm
she
gonna
say?
look it up because it was funny. I'm gonna tell you what
She
she
came
said. I'll
back
find
with
it.
pictures and all sorts of things, and I looked at the pictures, and I was like, no, still don't,
Yeah.
not there. While he's looking it up, Jody, what do you say?
Well,
You got anything?
mine is a little bit of a combination of some of yours, because when my immediate thought when I hit that sort of 10-year mark was, I'm going to call it lead acquisitions.
Okay.
And you, the two of you, Lee and Brent, somewhat made comments in regards to this. You know, Brent, you said talk about them buying leads from the portals, you know,
Sure.
you said chasing them on social media. Where leads come from, it is incredibly changed and complicated and can be expensive,
Yeah.
yet not necessarily productive. You know, if we look at
It can be productive.
study that NER has been doing, the profile of home buyers and sellers, I've been tracking it since 91. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the actual start year of it was, but and I actually have the answer to this question since 91 of where do buyers come from. It is not really changing all that much. So,
Yeah.
but the people who are chasing agents and brokerages selling them lead acquisition.
Yeah. I missed it.
Evan, put it up again.
Yeah.
In my research,
Tracking since 1991. I love that so much. Like, it makes my heart warm. You know, I
you
love
could say research alert and be a tad more
Oh,
polite
hey.
about it.
Oh.
The reason I didn't see when he put that up is because I was writing that down to ask you about that, Jody. So I'm on
Yeah,
your team.
So
I'm on your
I'm
team.
actually now going to share the screen. I'm going to put up my Excel spreadsheet pie chart.
Oh my, no.
No, she's not kidding. She gave it to me before.
I need it.
Yeah.
Send it my way. I'm coming. Anybody wants
I'll
it?
share the file with you, Brent.
There you
But,
go. I appreciate that.
But I think that's just a huge. I think that's a huge change, a huge disruption in our industry.
Well, I think it goes to just the change of the industry in general, which kind of leads me to my next question and maybe my last question, depending. Let's look at, what do you want to look at? 5 years, 10 years? What do you see as the biggest disruptor sort of moving forward?
I have one.
I think it's technology based. I think it's the advent of AI and in real estate. So it's going to be chat bots, it's going to be virtual touring, I don't think, and I'm not talking about replacing the human being again, because I don't think you will, but I think we will replace a number of our duties and tasks with artificial intelligence in the next 5 to 10 years.
I see that.
That seems reasonable to me.
Anybody else?
Evan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about, making the transaction easier. There's a lot of friction and really antiquated process, in buying or selling a home that I think could be, and I guess that's a technology thing. But just getting rid of some of the BS, some of the like legacy nonsense that you have to go through, should it take 30 or 60 days to sell a house. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's,
I'm with you. Go ahead, yeah, Lee.
well, I was going to say, Evan, I think you're right because, you know, in most cases, it's not the actual loan that's taking the time. It's the appraisal, or if you've got to get a survey, you know, I mean, it's those third party things. And lenders are already trying their darndest to cut out the appraisers. You know, I mean, they're using all kinds of AVMs. So, I mean, I think that time could shorten. I think you're onto something.
It's happening, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that some people are going to be cut out of the transaction altogether. I think that the role of the agent is going to change, and the value of the agent's going to change. But appraisers, I mean, Fannie's been keeping track of every single appraisal for the past, what, 6 or 7 years. I mean, they have quite literally billions of appraisals. So there's some that you get an appraisal that comes in, it doesn't even need, if there's enough activity in that particular area, it won't need an appraisal. So you know, even you start looking at title searches and different things like that, as all of those records become digitized. I mean, you can sort of see where the title search and different things may be streamlined, possibly from an AI, Jody, now that I think about it. So I think there may be a lot of things on the periphery that help make the transaction a little bit more economical, efficient. Probably will be a little bit better, but I do think it's going to be, we'll look back 10 years from now and go, all right, our roles have changed once again. I mean, I think out of the advent of sort of all four of what we talked about 10 years ago, our roles have changed.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah, absolutely.
It's part of that evolution. Now, what I'm curious about is, will this disruption, see what I did there, brought it back. Will this create a chasm between real estate agents where you have sort of the real estate agents that are moving towards the efficient, productive side and servicing those clients? And I do think there's going to be a client base here that wants it the good old fashioned way. So is there going to be a growing chasm, or will it bring everybody back together and force everybody, you know, kind of like the online MLS forced everybody into one direction? I'm curious to see if it creates a gap between, let's call it old and new agent versus forcing everybody to do it one way. That's what I don't think.
Well, I would say my answer was going to be, when you ask about the 5 to 10 year thing, I don't think it's going to happen in 5, but within 10. I think that if we have MLS, it's going to look drastically different.
Interesting.
Because, you know, I think now, you know, there's so much more separation of service, and we have so many agents and business models even that are buyer agent only. So if you think about it, if I'm a buyer agent only and all the listing agents are putting their stuff on MLS, I don't need MLS. I can just go to realtor.com. I mean, I can get everything I need between realtor.com and public record. So if I'm not listing, there's no reason for me to join an MLS. If I'm a listing agent, I still have a reason to join an MLS, but I'm not sure that that reason won't evolve into something different than what it is today. And I don't know that what it evolves into will be realtor owned.
Possibly.
We'll see.
Yeah. Evan, were you snapping your fingers up there, or some other type of
No, that meant money.
I know. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think that's probably going to be the chief non-disruptor. Is you've got certain very influential powers, whether they be, you know, NAR, big brokers, whatever it is, that they're to some degree can pull the reins on a lot of this thing. I mean, if they can't stop it, I think to some degree they can slow it down.
Well, let me ask you this. So right now, I mean, Zillow is getting more and more ingrained in the realtor culture.
Okay.
And there are more and more realtors who are getting on board with them, like you said, spending money with them. What if Zillow offered a nationwide MLS system for less than half the price of our annual dues? Do you think they'd get some business? Do you think, I mean, I wonder what their next step is.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's like you see, you mentioned how big they are. There's only one market in the United States where Zillow isn't number one. So, I mean,
What is it?
they have something, Houston. They have something to sell.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they've got some leverage. Even if you don't like them, I can see you buying into that for the exposure.
And it's Houston because Houston has been investing for decades now in the prominence of driving consumers to their website. And
Correct.
Houston just did a whole lot of things right from day one. Yeah.
Right. You know, Brent, you asked about would some of these changes create a chasm, but hasn't there always been a divide in real estate? Hasn't there always been the, you know, to paraphrase, haves and have nots, the do's and the, you know, the real doers and the, you know, the people that really don't do a lot of business. And
But I
so,
was talking about the productive agents. I mean, the productive agents are kind of, and you kind of see it some now, just fragmenting. I mean, you got some people that make their business just off Zillow leads, and some people that make their business just off social media, and some people that run their business just in the whole, you know, framework of the team concept. I don't sell a thing. I just basically manage a team. So it's really interesting to see, you know, how everybody's kind of picking their own little lane there. And whereas, you know, in the past it was just bring it all to me. So I'm just curious to see if the divide grows or if there's going to be some sort of, you know, some event that maybe brings everybody together. I don't know.
you know, one interesting aspect to add into how that divide plays out is the generational divide that's in the industry is now as well now. So we have a huge generational divide between millennials coming into our industry straight out of college for the first time ever as a chosen career,
Right.
to, as you know, the old guard, as you kind of referred to them. And technology will play a role in that, a attitude towards a new way of business. So it is possible that all of those things you said and this could create a bigger divide or a bigger well, actually, let me use again, since we paraphrase disruption into some more positive language, let me change divide into diversity.
Right.
In our business, which may be the more positive way of looking at what this will create.
Well, let's kind of, I want to switch here. We've got a few more minutes left. What's the opposite of disruption?
Opportunity.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's awesome, Jody. I get it. I get exactly what you're saying.
I don't. Explain it to me. I'm slow.
I think that when something is done totally different, it has an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for you to succeed. You know, when, you know, we look at, like, you know, Edison and the electricity and the light bulb, and, you know, and Steve Jobs in his garage creating a computer, and, you know, Jeff Bezos and Amazon's. Those things were all disruptions, but they were huge opportunities, not just for those people personally, but for lots of people that invested in them, people that utilized them. So I think the real opposite of it is opportunity.
Interesting. Anyone else?
I had one, but when she said that, I completely forgot because that was just too good. Yeah.
Well, I buy into that line of thinking, but I wouldn't call that the opposite of disruption. I would think the opposite is more like stagnation or apathy or sameness, you know, not evolving. But I mean,
I put a positive spin on that. I mean, I think disruption can sometimes mean distraction. So I think the opposite to some degree can be a good thing, you know, because when somebody, if it's disruption, that means your eyes off the ball looking at something else. And I'm coming to you like a freight train. So focus is probably the best I use that word a lot, so I was trying to think of another word,
Yeah,
but
I think
I would say
Focus
focus.
is a good word. Focus should be one of our other words because I
Yes.
think that, I think
That's on
a
my
good one.
list.
Yeah,
So
that's a good word.
I get what you're saying, Brent, but I think if things are the same and there's not a change, then it's easy to just get complacent.
Maybe.
And I think
Oh, yeah, there you go.
complacency and disruption could be opposites.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I don't know that complacency is ever good.
And I guess that's kind of gets to the point and sort of wrapping this up. I mean, what we're getting at is disruption can be both good and bad. And when disruption is change, not just for change's sake, but change to make you go, holy crap, let's think about this. I think that's good. But when disruption turns into a distraction, and all I got to think about is this distraction, this distraction, this distraction, it takes your eye off the ball. If I'm sitting around worrying about iBuyers instead of worrying about running my business, then, and that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of that stuff. Anytime you hear disruption, I feel like everybody's complaining about stuff that, I mean, if you could just use half that energy to focus on your own business, good Lord, have mercy. We can,
You gotta learn to
at least
multitask.
have that process. So, just kind of tying a bow on it. Lee, we'll start with you. All right. Disruption, final thoughts.
I like it. I like it. Even when it's not something that sticks, it just gives me something to think about. It makes my brain work.
Good.
Sometimes it leads me to better ideas.
Right.
I like it.
Super. Evan?
Yeah, I'll take that and kind of run with it a little bit. I definitely like the innovation aspect and change. I think everything, if it's not changing, then it's kind of going backwards in a sense. I would split it and look at it from two sides. From the consumer side, it's fantastic because with disruption, if there's a market, that's good for the consumer. If there's not a market for it, then that just kind of goes away. I think the negative side is maybe looking at it from a competitive standpoint and getting scared and saying, "Oh no, that the change is hard" aspect. So I'm with Lee. Pro innovation. I'm going to take a page out of Jody's book and spin it and call it innovation.
Super. Jody, final thoughts.
My final thought is to align yourself with your own business models, whether you're an agent, a team, or a brokerage, and look for the opportunity that exists in whatever you're viewing as disruption.
Super.
Brent, final word.
Hocus pocus. Focus. Don't let disruption be a distraction. Find out what you do and do it the best that you absolutely can. And just boil them over, I guess. I don't know. Hit them where it hurts. I don't know.
There's the title, Brent, right there that you said. Don't let disruption be distraction.
He started to turn into like a cliche machine there all of a sudden. Catchphrases and rhyming and
I think disruption to some degree in a lot of ways causes more harm than good, and I don't mean necessarily physical harm. I just mean in the sense that everybody spins their wheels talking about something that to be honest, the impact on either their business or their daily lives is minuscule. So that's part of just the way that I see it. And again, I'm the contrarian of the group. I hate to do that, but that's just sort of the way that I feel. So
I think
I want to end on a much lighter note than that. I was trying to figure out a better way. Everybody have a good day, maybe? Is everybody happy? How's the day
he's
going?
going to Santana.
That's right. So wrapping up, Lee's going to see Santana. And so good. Well, this wraps up our episode of In Other Words. We will see you next week where we'll have one single solitary word. All right. So typically what we do is we just throw out a couple of words, we vote, and then we're going to see what's happening. So if any of you out there want us to have an interesting word for us, just shoot us an email. Let us know. All right. So
I'm voting for Hocus Pocus.
Follow us, subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Y'all have a great day.
All right, bye. Bye.